Don't want our speakers on. Okay. This video is going to be on how to create a soft vignette in Photoshop. I'm going to take a photo, I'm going to lasso select the photo, and I'm going to feather the edges out so it's kind of what we call a soft fade or a soft vignette. And it's a nice kind of effect that you can use in your graphic design. And I'm going to do this in relation to the current project that we're working on, which is a pet shelter website. So without further ado, let me share my screen and get right to it. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is download the photo that we're going to use for this example. And that photo is here in Google. I'm not going to go through the assignment, but if you're doing this assignment, you know where this photo is. Click on the link and find it in Google. I'm going to control click, holding down the control key. I'm also on a Mac, so just to let everybody know that it would be the let's see, right click, I guess, on a PC. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to save the image as, and as it's trying to figure out that, I'm going to save it to the desktop, and I'm just going to call this The Andersons. Okay, save it to the desktop, go ahead and save. So there it is on my desktop right there. You can kind of see it peeking out. Okay. Let me get this bar down here. I'm going to minimize now my Google. So the first thing I'm going to do is, well, let me just kind of show you what the effect is going to be first. Let me open up the actual InDesign file, and we will see that the effect is going to be something that looks like this. Okay, so as you can see, the photo has been feathered and placed on this kind of brown background. And that brown background was actually sampled from a color from this photograph. And I'll do that later. But the main thing is to teach you how to create this technique here. Okay, so here is the original photo here. And let me double click on that and you'll see the original photo is what we call a square cut photo, which means that the edges are square and it's pretty much in the ratio of what most cameras would take. So that is kind of what we're dealing with. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to bring it into Photoshop. You can drag it onto the Photoshop icon. My Photoshop icon is down here, so you can see it right here. Or you can go into Photoshop and open a new file. So I'll do it that way. I'm sorry, not create a new file, but open an existing file. And there it is, the Andersons JPEG. So I'll open that. And here we have it in Photoshop. I'll bring it up large, Command 0 or Control 0 on a PC. And so here we have that photo. So what we want to do, and all photos that come into Photoshop come in as a background layer, which is partially editable. And we need it fully editable. So we could make a copy of this background layer, but I'm just going to turn this background layer into a fully editable layer and just double click on it, and layer 0 is fine, and click OK. Okay, so now you can see it's layer 0. The little lock has gone away. So now we can edit this to our heart's content. The tool that I'm going to use to make this selection, and that's exactly what we want to do, is make a selection around this photo. And then we want to feather it to a certain amount of pixels. I'm going to go over here and let me just close InDesign for a sec so that you don't see that. It's not confusing. I'm going to go over to my toolbar here and I'm going to get the lasso tool, which is the third tool down. You can see it says lasso tool. I'm going to select that tool. And what I'm going to do is draw a very kind of rough outline around what I want to select. So in this case, I will start anywhere. I'm going to start the top of his head here and just kind of come around. And you want to make sure that you have enough space on your desktop to use your mouse. I'm going to cut off Goldie's feet and her hands here. And you're going to see that this really doesn't make too much of a difference in terms of the communication of the fade. Now, one of the things that you're going to have to do, and notice how I'm giving some space between the subject and what I'm drawing, just giving it a little space. One of the things you're going to have to do is connect where you started and where you ended. Just kind of touch it there, and you'll see the marching ants come around this selection. So this is what we selected. Now, basically, if we didn't feather anything, and I just kind of clicked and moved the selection out, it would be as if I cut it out with a scissor. And that's not what we want. We want a faded effect to this. So let me undo that. And the way we're going to create this fade is we're going to go up to Select, Modify, and we're going to feather this selection. We're going to feather it. And when you do that, it's going to ask you how many pixels do you want to feather the selection. That all depends on the resolution of the photo. How much resolution does this photo have? It's high resolution photo, you're going to have to feather it with more pixels. If it's a low resolution photo, it would be less pixels. The more pixels that you feather it, the softer the fade is going to be. The less pixels, 0 pixels, would be like cutting it out with a scissor. And so what you're going to have to do is just kind of experiment here. Try a number, and you'll see right away whether that fades enough. If it doesn't, increase the amount of pixels. If it fades too much, then you might want to decrease the amount of pixels. So I'm going to use 25 to start with. Then I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to come up to Layer, Layer Mask, and I'm going to reveal the selection. Okay, and when I click Reveal Selection, you can see the fade of what 25 pixels does. Now that's a very soft fade, and I like the way it's fading. It's very soft, but the problem is it fades it so gradually that it fades it right to the edge of this photo. And unfortunately, if we were to bring this into InDesign, we're going to have a line here. In fact, let me save this out right now. And I'm going to go to File, Save as a Copy. And I'm going to call this the Andersons Test 1. Test 1. And I'm going to make this, now we have to make it a PNG so that we preserve all this transparency over here. I'm going to save it to the desktop. It's called the Andersons Test 1 PNG. And I'm going to go ahead and save this. Click OK, and it should come out right there. There's our faded out photo. Okay, if I go to InDesign now and open up InDesign, and let me go to a blank page here. So let me go to this page that I already made here. I'm going to delete this photo here. And what I did was I colored the background a brownish color. So let's take it back to the color of paper. Okay. Fill, not the outline, but the fill with paper. Okay, so it's white. And let's bring in this photo into this InDesign file. Okay, now there's a few ways we could do that. We can just click, drag it from the desktop, bring it in, and there it is. Another way we can do it is File, Place, and kind of click and drag. That's another way to do it. But when we bring this in, you can see now, and I'm going to just kind of zoom in here. We can see this harsh line here. And this harsh line is basically because in Photoshop we faded it so gradually that it didn't quite fade it out into total transparency up here. It faded it to the edge of the photo, same with the bottom here. And so when we go into InDesign and we place it, we have this hard line, both top and bottom. See, that's really bad right there. We don't want to place that in our InDesign file. What we want is we want a fade that looks like this. Okay, that's very soft when it gets to the bottom. So that tells us a couple of things. Number one, that our fade is too soft, but actually it's working side to side. The problem is that we don't have enough canvas up here. We don't have enough of the photo to fade it into total transparency. So what I'm going to have to do is go to the mask here, and I'm going to show you this mask. Okay, the mask, when we did layer, mask, reveal, selection, it made a mask over, based on our selection with the lasso tool. And what's white is what's shown, and what's black is what's transparent. So what we need to do, and notice how the white goes all the way up to the top. What we need to do is we need to paint with black and kind of close down this mask. And if we do that, we will not have that harsh line there. So we need to paint with black up here, and we need to paint with black down here. And we need to basically kind of close down this mask. Okay, we can't let it go to the edge. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to get black as my foreground color here. So on my foreground color, I'm going to click black. Actually, what I can do is select it from up here. Okay, and it's black. Or double click on it and choose black down here. And then I'm going to get my brush tool out. Again, let me get this out of here. I'm going to get my brush tool in Photoshop, which is this tool right here. Okay. When you click and hold, you'll see the brush tool, pencil tool, etc. But make sure it's the brush tool. We're going to click on the mask. Now this is important. We need to paint on the mask, not on the photo. If I paint black on the photo, it's going to paint black right through the photo. Okay, right now it's painting black, but I've selected the photo, and if I click and paint, you can see how it's painting black right on the photo. That's not what we want. I'm going to Command Z that. What we want is to select the mask and then paint with black. We're going to paint up here, and normally when you choose a brush, your default is a soft brush. And if we go up here, these are the brush attributes up here. If I click up here where it says 45, see I click, right now it's at 0% hardness, meaning that it's painting very soft. This is a hard brush, which means it paints, very opaque and very sharp. This is soft. And normally it defaults to soft. So you probably don't have to do anything here. Press Escape to get rid of that menu. The brush tool is represented by a circle. So if you press your right bracket key, okay, these are the bracket keys next to the letter P on your keyboard, PC or Mac. Right bracket makes your brush bigger. Left bracket makes your brush smaller. So I'm going to have a brush size about like this. I'm painting with black on the mask. And watch what happens as I paint. Okay, I know it's very subtle here, but I'm going to keep painting. And what I'm doing is I'm closing this mask down. Now I'm painting with an opacity of 100% and a flow of 100%. Go ahead and keep these at 100%. You don't have to change this. As you click, okay, it doesn't look like anything's happening, but what you're doing is you're starting to paint away the photo. Okay, and that's exactly what we want up here. We want to paint away the photo and close down this mask. Okay, now a good way to see, with this transparent checkerboard here, it's kind of hard to see if we painted away that. What we can do is we can go up to Photoshop here and go down to Photoshop's preferences, go to transparency and gamut, and make the background, instead of a, the transparency settings, instead of a grid size of medium, make the transparency none, and that'll turn it to white. Okay, and then you can see now it's white. Now it's easier to see that we did paint away that up here. Okay, let me go back in history just to show you. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to go back in history, and you can see all my brush tool, is recorded on my brush tool. Let me go up to here. Okay, see how it goes right to the edge? So when I choose my brush tool, painting with black on the mask, as I click, you can see it's starting to paint it away. Okay, and I'm going to keep going over this and over this until I get white at the very top. That means that line is going to disappear. Okay, the more you click and let go, the more you go over it, okay, the more it starts erasing. Because it's not really erasing, it's adding more black to the mask. Okay, and with the white background you can see that much better. Okay, now I'm going to go down to the bottom here, and we have this harsh line at the bottom. So I'm going to paint again, and I'm going to start painting. And you can see now what's happening. Okay, I'm starting to paint away that hard line down here. Okay, I'm going to leave this over here. That's fine. Now if I paint with white, okay, notice if I click this and make white as the foreground, I'm actually going to start adding more of the photo back in. Okay, so by painting with white, you're opening up the mask. With painting with black, painting with black, you're closing down the mask. Okay, and that's exactly what I want to do. So now all of this is nice and white. Okay, I might want to bring some of that photo back here, so I might want to paint with white. Only this time I don't want it to bring it back at 100% opacity. I want to bring it back at very little opacity, maybe 15%. As I click, you can see that it's starting to slowly bring back some of this. And that's what you can do, is if you want to bring back some of the photo, go ahead and just kind of paint with white. Okay, you paint with black, you do the exact opposite. You start erasing some of this. Okay, let me paint with white. I'm going to paint at even a smaller opacity and just kind of fill these in a little bit right there. Okay, that looks good. Okay, the main thing is I want this to be nice and white at the bottom here. Okay, so now you can play around with this as much as you want, but that looks much better. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is save this out. I'm going to save this out. Save a copy. I'm going to call this the Andersons Test 2. And I'll save it again as a PNG. I'm going to save it to my desktop. So I have test 1 with the hard line, and test 2 now should look better. I'm going to save it. Save. There's test 2. Now let's bring test 2 into InDesign. Okay, here's my InDesign file. Let me back out. We know that test 1 test 1 has that hard line right there. So let's look at what test 2 looks like. Let me crop this a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to crop this down. Place this over here, Command 0. Okay, so here's my test 1. And now let's bring in test 2. So I'm going to click, drag that over, bring that in, click and drag test 2. And there's my test 2. Okay, now let's look at the difference between test 1 and test 2. Test 1 has this hard line, test 2 does not. It's nice and soft up here. Test 1 has a hard line at the bottom, test 2 does not. And that's because I modified this in Photoshop. Okay, and we're getting a better fade. Now, why do we have to do that? It's because the original photo here, we just didn't have enough room from the top of his head to the edge of the photo. And we couldn't fade it to fade out into transparency. So I had to make a modification on this. Now, if the couple was smaller and we had much more background, then we probably wouldn't have to have made those adjustments. Okay. All right. So now, here's what the difference is. Okay. I am going to minimize this page here. Okay. And let me just put this over here. Press my W key so we can see the working view. I'm going to put this on this side here. Okay. Let's zoom into this page a little bit more. Okay. Oh, you know what? What's interesting is this doesn't seem to have transparency attached to it. This seems to be a JPEG. I wonder why. Let me bring this in again. Oh, I know why. Because when I brought this in, I didn't delete that white background when I saved it. Yeah, before when I saved it. Okay, okay. This is before, this is the original. I did the feather and I didn't do the brush modifications here. So I'm going to save this again. I'm going to call this test 1. Sorry about that. Let me save this as a copy. I'm going to call this the Anderson's test 1 again. Test 1. I'm going to make this a PNG. Okay. And I'm going to save it to the desktop. I'm going to replace this one here. Okay. And now I'm going to bring this in here. There we go. And let me put this out there. There we go. Okay. All right. Let me fill the page with a color just so that we can see what it looks like and how I sample that color. I want to draw a box. And I'm going to fill this box, okay, the fill here. I'm going to fill it with a color from this photo. So with this box selected and the fill square in front, I'm going to grab my eyedropper tool and I'm going to go in and grab a kind of brownish color, maybe something around here. Okay, when I click, you can see it fills it with whatever I clicked on. I'll do that again. I'll go back up to my selection tool, go down to my eyedropper tool, and if I selected a darker gold right here, like a red, okay, as I click, it fills it with that exact color that I was pointing to with my eyedropper tool. So that's how you sample colors from your photograph. Okay, just go to your eyedropper tool, okay, with your box selected. Whatever you click on is going to be the color it fills with. So I'm going to go back to this kind of lightish brown here. See in her blouse right here, maybe even something like this. Okay, when I click, you can see that color become the background. It becomes the fill color. Okay, now the point I wanted to make is if I bring this photo in and I place it here, okay, I'm going to bring it to front, object, arrange to front, okay, and when I click off, I'm going to take away my guides and hit my W key. You can see now, if I enlarge this, Command and Shift, you can see when I deselect, you can see that harsh line right there. You see that line? Okay, and that's not what we want. Now, if I grab the other photo, this photo here, and I bring this in, and I'll arrange this to the front. Okay, let's just put this one over here for now. And I grab this one, and I Command and Shift and enlarge this. And deselect. You can see the difference. Okay, you see that harsh line there? Now we don't have a harsh line. It's nice and smooth. And that's the one, this is the one we want to use. We don't want to use this one. So I'm going to select that, delete that. Bring this over here. Bring this up. And place it over here. And then what I did was I put type in here, text in here. And ultimately got this effect right there. Okay, see, no hard line coming top and bottom. Then I put text in here, put my navigational points up here for this website. Okay, so that's how you do a soft vignette in Photoshop. You download the photo, you come into Photoshop, you make a layer mask, you feather that mask so many pixels. If you have to do some touch up around the edges so you don't get a harsh line like that, then you need to do that. If not, you can save it, file, save a copy, save it into your folder, and then bring it into InDesign. Place it in InDesign, and you're good to go. Okay. So that is true for any other type of image, and that's what we call doing a soft vignette. Okay, looks like my lighting got much darker here. Something went on. Need to up my ISO now. There we go. Okay. I brought up the ISO on the camera, so it's brighter now. Not that you care about that, but anyway, that is it. So I'm going to sign off, and hope you got something out of this video. Give it a try, do a soft vignette, and you'll probably use it in a lot of different instances. Okay, with that, see you later.